Cade Mercer signed the waiver with a steady hand and a tight jaw. He nudged the sun-faded tote, no longer diapers, now crayons and crackers, beneath Ivy's chair. 3 lanes down, laughter scraped the concrete like a broom. Cade kept his eyes on the clipboard as if a form could shield a person. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're from. If this story moves you, please subscribe. Tomorrow, I have a special story for you. A fluorescent hum trembled in the ceiling. The smell of oil and old cardboard laid a film on his tongue. The range officer, a square-shouldered woman with a name patch that read J.O., slid the clipboard back. You been here before? Years ago, he said. Outdoors. Different place. Joe's glance flicked to the little girl on the metal chair, feet swinging in mismatched socks. She knows the rules? She could recite them, Cade said. But I'll keep her behind the glass with headphones. We won't be trouble. Ivy looked up at Joe with serious hazel eyes. We brought snacks. She held up a sealed bag of gummy bears like a peace treaty. Joe's mouth twitched. Gummies aren't PPE, kiddo. They are emotionally, Ivy replied, and Cade felt the laugh rise in his chest before he pushed it down, because laughter loosened the helmet straps of his day and he couldn't afford anything slipping right now. Not with the paperwork in his pocket and the hearing in 2 weeks and the way the world judged steady hands by the wrong measures. Lane 7, Joe said. Keep it safe. Cade nodded and steered the small rolling case toward the glass partition where spectators could sit. Ivy hopped along, backpack shrieking rainbows. He let her choose a seat far from the boys already staking their territory at lanes 3 and 4, their voices turned up to be overheard. You see this setup, one of them said, the one with a beard cultivated like a houseplant. Cerakoted, baby. Took me 3 months to get a slot. You don't just buy precision. No, his friend answered, you lease it from Instagram. They laughed, an expensive sound. Cade felt a tap at the back of his neck and kept his shoulders even. Ivy swung her feet and tipped her head. They're loud, she whispered. Will be boring, Cade said. Boring wins. He opened the case. Foam breathed apart. A memory tried to climb the ladder of his spine and he stepped sideways from it, as he'd learned to do, letting it fall back into the dark. He set his ear protection on Ivy and made sure her glasses covered the soft red mark time had left beside her eye, a crescent that could be a birthmark if someone didn't look too hard, if someone didn't ask, where'd you get that, and make him explain again about a rogue cabinet hinge, about how he was present, how he was careful, how accidents live in houses like dust. Joe's voice cleared over the intercom. Cold range. Check your benches. The boys at lane 3 kept talking as they pulled their targets. Bro, cold bore is a myth. When you're good, you're good. Cade watched their mouths in the glass reflection because he preferred mouths to eyes. Eyes lied on purpose. Mouths lied because they needed attention. He put Ivy's water bottle in the cup holder. You let me know if you need a break. I'm good. She leaned into his arm like a sonar ping, 1 blink, 2. And he sent 1 back, the signal that meant I'm here, without saying it out loud where the room could steal it. He took his place at 7. The bench metal was cool. Targets hung limp at 10 yards with red circles like candy. He didn't love candy. He loved paper that stayed still and the math you could do with it without saying the numbers aloud. He set down a plain range bag, no logos, and unzipped it to reveal nothing special, a tool he knew. The steel had no vanity. The polymer had no audience. It just did what it did if asked correctly and left you honest with yourself. He breathed with the room. Fans exhaled. Somewhere, a phone buzzed and then went quiet like a scolded cat. Hey, Chief, Beard Houseplant called down the lanes, his voice angling to the glass where Ivy Saturday you look like you brought a picnic. You going to teach her crochet? Cade's hand stilled on the slider. Not because of the words. Because of the angle, men who turned jokes into weapons always aimed them past you to touch what you loved. He didn't look. Looking was feeding. He reached for the target switch instead, sent the paper out slow as a second hand sweeping a clock. New guy's got a thrift store rig, the other boy said. Bet he flinches like a car alarm. Cade let the sound roll by. He felt his heartbeat tap against the ear cups. He counted the taps without numbers. Cold Range turned hot with Joe's okay. The room clicked as if it had a spine, as if its vertebrae aligned. He lifted the tool. He did not think about anything to do with it in the way people who like to hear themselves describe things thought about them. He didn't name steps. He didn't narrate. He simply became that small bright place where the world threaded itself into a hole you could see, and he set himself there. Try not to scare the kid, Beard Houseplant called. Laughter latched onto his vowels. Cade angled his body so the glass partition held Ivy like a framed photograph. Her eyes were on him and her mouth had the shape she used when she wanted to remember something forever. He did not wait. He did not preen. He did not tilt his head like a man romancing a mirror. He took his first shot of the day. The sound hit and fled. Brass kissed steel and spun to the mat. The paper did what paper always does when you speak to it in one perfect syllable, it answered. Silence took the lane and shook it. Okay, Joe said into the intercom after a beat, voice flat to mask interest. Keep it safe. The boys at 3 and 4 didn't speak. Machines in the ceiling breathed. Cade sent the target back. When the carrier whirred close, the red circle was clean. Not just a hole. The center had been laced open where the manufacturer's staple bit the cardboard. Below it, a thin white thread, the lane marker string someone had knotted to the bottom of the paper, had been cut in the same breath. The paper sagged and then let go. Cade caught it with his left hand without looking at anything but Ivy's reflection, because children catch you catching things and keep that image like a lighthouse. The boys' laughter didn't return. Something else shifted in the air, aggression looking for a new costume. Beard Houseplant took off his ear pro and gestured with his chin. Lucky, he said. Could be, Cade answered. He kept his voice unraveled, threads available. He didn't want to win anything here except quick exits. Do it again, the friend said. His hair had the sculpted permanence of a statue's. Cold bore as fluke bore. Let's see the science. Joe's gaze cut down the lanes. Gentlemen. Keep to your lanes unless otherwise invited. We're inviting, Beard said. New Guykin, he stopped. His eyes found Ivy through the glass and did a small narrowing thing Cade recognized from men who were children once and learned the power of making other people feel smaller to erase their own size for a minute. Please don't, Cade said. He placed the paper down, the sagging threadline draped between his fingers like an answer he hadn't wanted to give. We're here for an hour. You can be loud after. You military? The friend asked, and it was not curiosity but a trapdoor disguised as a question. Cade didn't step. I'm a single dad, he said. Yeah? Beard laughed again, but softer. Where's Mom? Out, Ivy said clearly from behind the glass, and everyone looked because something in the tin of her voice rang like a penny on a table. The range lady said not to be loud. Joe's mouth wore a new cornered look that said she'd seen 100 versions of this and all of them took too long. Shoot your lanes, she said. Cade sent a fresh target out. He could feel heat gathering around his ears the way sun collects in a hollow. He could feel the old training, the instincts he refused to call anything but breathing, standing up inside him, polite but ready. He didn't want that person. He wanted the one who made being chilly and remembered field trip forms and taught a child to tie loops. The second shot slid out like a whisper under a door. The paper answered again, polite and severe. The two holes sat close enough to be one argument in different fonts. Beard took one step into the walkway as if the distance from his lane to Cade's life was only drywall to be kicked. Joe's hand lifted and he froze. Sir, she said to him, and managed to fold 6 warnings into one syllable. Just saying, he muttered. It's not hard at 10 yards. It's hard to be quiet, Ivy said, and Cade had to pretend he coughed to cage the smile. She bit a gummy bear in half and lined the halves like tiny pillows. Phone light flared, someone recorded. Cade felt the algorithm of 1,000 strangers lean in. He exhaled and called the target back, tore the paper down and replaced it with a blank one he'd tucked into his case. No circles, no commands, white like nothing had been decided. He sent it to 15 yards. Beard snorted softly as if distance was where bravery lived. Cade reached into the side pocket of his bag and set a coin on the bench. It wasn't a challenge coin and it wasn't sentimental. It was a token from a laundromat he and Ivy frequented, the one with the mural of a whale on the side. He held it to the paper for a moment, feeling the cool disc through the fibers. He did not tape it. He did not make a show. He only pressed a circle into the paper and then took the coin back and put it in Ivy's palm through the gap in the glass. "For luck," he said, and she closed her hand as if she were a bank vault. He returned to lane 7, and this time the room changed its posture, boys leaning, Joe pretending she wasn't leaning, phones lifting, the air putting on its formal clothes for that brief ceremony between a person and the thing they mean. He took one breath that wasn't about lungs, it was about clearing space in a house where a storm had lived for years. He raised the tool. He met the white center with that small bright place he kept, the one no court, no paperwork, no neighbor with opinions could invade, and he spoke to it again, once. The sound came and went. When the carrier brought the paper home, people forgot to pretend. There, in the light, one hole sat on the ghost ring he'd pressed with the coin, like punctuation at the end of a sentence someone had tried to erase. Beard's mouth made a shape Cade had seen on men who learned the ocean wasn't about boats, it was about what you didn't see. "Holy," the friend began, and Joe said his name in a way that folded his word back up and put it away. Ivy knocked the glass with her fist once and then turned the coin in her hand. "Dad," she mouthed. "You wrote a circle." He nodded without letting pride loosen anything it didn't need to loosen. Pride breaks you faster than grief. He put the paper down and inked a small date in the corner because dates are cages for time when you need them to be. A man at lane 2, quiet until now, shifted. He had a clean-shaved head and a jaw that knew clenched mornings, the kind of man you see at a service station at dawn drinking coffee that burns because being awake is cheaper than sleeping. He looked at Cade, not like a fan. Like a witness. "What unit?" he asked softly when Joe called a cold range. Cade tightened the cap on his marker. "I'm not wearing a unit," he said, and he meant, "I am trying to be only a father right here." He meant, "Those questions open rooms I don't have time to clean." The man nodded once, not offended. "Roger." He went back to his lane like nothing else mattered to him but the quotient of today. Beard houseplant couldn't leave it. "Dude, you trying to be a legend or something?" "No," Cade said, because legends are ghosts who forgot to stop carrying things and he had enough weight. He checked Ivy's water again and slid a coloring book under the glass. She touched the page with her pencil like a priest blessing bread. "Let's make it interesting," Beard said, lowering his voice to the kind of hush that isn't about respect. $100. First shot on a playing card at 25. He held up a deck like it was fate. Joe straightened. "We don't gamble on this floor." "It's not gambling," Beard protested, smiling like a man who has already filmed the apology. "It's not on my floor," Joe said again. Beard shrugged elaborately. "Fine. Bragging rights, then. Come on, Chief. Show the kid a hero." Cade's jaw found its old stone. The phrase hero tracked mud on everything it walked through. He looked at Ivy. She was staring at the coloring page, but he knew she was watching the reflection of him in the glass with the attention she gave bees on flowers, still, breath held, waiting to see if sting or honey. "I don't need rights to brag," he said. "We're just practicing." "Practicing what?" the friend asked. Cade glanced at the paper with its lone perfect hole and the ghost circle around it. "Leaving," he said. He set up another white sheet and sent it to 10. His phone thrummed in his pocket, a text from a number marked in his mind as "Do Not Ignore." He glanced only enough to read Lena, "Court moved to this Friday. Can you make it?" He could make it to anything if it was about Ivy. He could make it in duct-taped boots across a state line of nails. He put the phone face down and breathed until his pulse stopped banging around like a kid with a wooden spoon in a metal pot. The man at lane 2 fired 3 slow, careful shots and gathered his things. He slid past Cade on his way to the desk and let his hand brush the paper in a way that asked permission. Cade inclined his head. A quiet thank you moved between them without touching air. The boys at 3 and 4 were restless now, and the way men become when a thing they can't bully refuses to explain itself. Bet he can't at 25, Beard muttered, but to himself this time. The friend looked at Ivy and then away quickly, as if he'd stumbled into an unarmed church. Cade kept going. Because practice is the opposite of spectacle. Because repetition builds rooms where panic can't find you. Because this hour belonged to Ivy and the discipline of doing what you said you'd do. He took 7 measured shots over the next 15 minutes, stopping twice to retie Ivy's shoelace and once to open the gummy bears and once more to scribble his name on a waiver Joe had forgotten to initial. He did not chase perfection. He let it come and go like a stray cat. He fed consistency instead. When he finally cleared his bench, boredom had returned to the boys enough to make them careless. Beard swept his case open with a flourish and nearly took a grip over the line before Joe's voice cracked overhead. Clear the line. The room froze. Beard blinked, tried to smile, but nobody was hungry for his grin now. Joe walked down the lattice of lanes, her boots stitching sound into the rubber floor. She stopped at 3 and spoke low, the kind of quiet reserved for funerals and serious mistakes. Beard's face changed shape again, embarrassment followed by anger followed by the brittle nothing a boy makes when he's about to do something stupid. Cade felt the change before it happened. Some rooms have barometers built into the walls. This one's needle-dipped. He turned his head and saw Beard tilt the muzzle down in a gesture that could be humility or contempt depending on what you meant by it. The friend rolled his shoulders like a boxer in the wrong ring. Joe's hand hovered over the emergency switch. Shoulders at other lanes tensed. Somewhere behind Cade, Ivy moved her shoe and it rubbed the chair with a small squeal that sounded too much like a word. Cold range, Joe said again, but the words came out carrying more than rules. They carried worry. They carried a plea. Beard smirked and let the barrel tap the bench with a cluck, not dangerous by itself, but close enough to disrespect that it made people angry. Angry men have poor aim. Cade stepped back from his bench. He put both palms face up where anyone could see them, fingers open as if he were holding a bird he did not want to frighten. He said to Joe, not loudly, "It's okay. He wants an audience." "Don't give him one," Joe snapped. Beard's eyes darted to Ivy again. "I bet the kid knows all the safety rules," he said, not a question, but an invitation to humiliation. "She knows enough to back away from men who talk like that," Cade replied. His voice stayed even. "Calm as a rope bridge, you don't bounce on it." The friend planted his hands on the bench and leaned over the lane divider just enough to break the invisible line good people keep. "Hey, hero," he said. "Hey, single dad. What do you teach your kid when your hands shake?" Cade did not look at his hands. He looked at Joe's face, pale now, circled around the eyes with that tired anger range officers carry like a second job. He looked at the man at lane 2, who had not left after all and stood at the register as if he'd forgotten how to sign his name. He looked at Ivy. Her coin sat in her palm, whale side up. Her mouth wasn't smiling. She was holding very still the way rabbits do before a hawk passes, trusting stillness more than speed. "Sir," Joe said to Beard, her voice wires pulled tight, "if you touch that line again, I'm calling it. Last warning." Beard seemed to be a man who had never let a last warning be the last anything. He tilted his head, as if the ceiling fan was whispering instructions. Cade's phone vibrated again on the bench. "Lena, Friday 9 a.m. Judge Bueller. Bring Ivy's school filed, and then, immediately, also, an investigator may stop by today for a home check. Heads up." His throat clicked dry. For a second the room lost its edges. He reached for the water bottle and knocked it with the back of his hand. The bottle rolled, bumped the partition, and Ivy's coin rolled too, off her lap, clinked against the base of the glass, and spun in a slow, bright, ringing circle that drew every eye. Beard watched the coin with a cat's focus and leaned again, just enough to cross the idea of a boundary if not the measured one. Joe's finger hovered, then pressed the red bar. The lights over the lanes went amber. A siren coughed once like an old man. "Cease fire," Joe said, louder than before, and for the first time, fear walked hand in hand with authority in her tone. Cade did not move toward Beard. He moved toward Ivy. Sometimes every bad thing that has ever happened to you tries to happen again in a new jacket. Sometimes you hear the jacket before you see it. He heard the sound he hates, the tiny gasp that means a child is trying not to cry because crying would change the room. Then a new sound, small but not from the range, the bell over the front door. Feet on the mat. Men talking low. The angle of their voices wrong for buying lane time. Joe's head snapped toward the desk. Beard looked too, and in that look was the glint of a boy telling himself a story where he is the main character and the point is to make the world clap. Two men in plain clothes entered. They didn't move like influencers or customers. Their eyes did the math of rooms that Cade recognized not because of patches on sleeves but because of the way pressure gathers in a body trained to measure distances between trouble and exit. One of them scanned the lanes and found Cade in the same breath that Cade found him. Recognition dropped between them like a coin landing heads. "Cade Mercer?" the man asked. He didn't shout. He didn't have to. His voice carried with the gravity of the kind of question you can't dodge without rearranging your life. Beard's smirk faltered, confused by the sudden shift in spotlight. The friend straightened. Joe's thumb hovered over the reset switch and didn't press it. Ivy's fingers tightened around the coin until her knuckles went white. "Dad," she said, and the one word crossed the glass like a bridge built in a storm. Cade turned to her, because you always turn to your child first, and then back to the man who knew his name without asking a clerk, and the room seemed to contract to the size of a heartbeat. "We need a word," the man said, stepping toward the line in a way that was careful, respectful, practiced. "Outside." "Not now," Joe said automatically. "Not on my floor." The man nodded, understanding range law like he understood other laws. He lifted his hands, palms open, as if he were about to catch rain. "When you're clear," he told Cade. "Please." Cade's mouth went dry again. He swallowed and tasted cardboard, oil, the copper of adrenaline. He looked at Ivy and at the text on his phone and at the coin guttering to a stop near her heel. He looked at the boys who'd come here to play at power and now didn't know where to put their hands. He cleared his bench. He did it slow, visible, in order. He thought of Friday, of a judge who would measure him by the shape of his days, not the shape of his scars. He scraped the loose brass into the bucket and stacked the paper targets like polite letters he'd never send. Joe watched him with a question she didn't ask because there wasn't time. The two men waited near the door, not impatient, but as if something with a timer was ticking under the floor. Cade lifted the tote, slung the case handle, and turned to Ivy with his best calm glued to his face. "We're going to step outside," he said softly. "Hold my hand." She did. The room exhaled them into the entryway. The bell rang again as the door shut behind them. The men in plain clothes stood beside a poster about eye protection and pointed to the small lobby to the right where a vending machine hummed and a corkboard held business cards for locksmiths and landscapers. "Mr. Mercer," the taller one said, and he smelled faintly of wintergreen and copy paper. "I'm Investigator Hall. This is Officer Vega. We're following up on..." He glanced at Ivy and stopped, choosing words like stones across a river. "On a report." Cade felt heat crawl, not anger. Anger is hot then cold, but that other heat, the one that comes when someone reaches into your life with the clinical confidence of a gloved hand. "A report about what?" he asked, though a part of him had already opened the drawer where he kept certain files labeled with someone else's name. Vega's eyes flicked to Ivy's face, then to the little crescent beside her eye that the glasses hid when they stayed perfectly straight. One lens had tilted. Vega's jaw flexed. "Sir," he said gently, "we'll need to." "Dad," Ivy said, tugging at Cade's sleeve. She had gone very still and very small in the way Ivy went when the world brought strangers. "Is this about Friday?" The vending machine hummed louder for a second, as if it wanted to cover what no one wanted to say. Cade knelt to Ivy's height. He smoothed her hair. His voice tried to be normal and almost made it. "It's about us being brave for a few minutes," he said. "We can do brave. Right?" She nodded, the coin printing a circle into her palm. Hall's hand opened toward the door that led to the asphalt and the bright white of a late morning that had forgotten last night's forecast. "We can talk where it's quieter," he said. "No rush." But there was a rush. There was always a rush when the thing you can lose is the only thing you have. Cade stood. He felt the old him, the one he tried not to name, rise like a tide up the ladder of his bones. He swallowed him back like a pill without water. He picked up the tote. He lifted Ivy's backpack onto his shoulder and took her hand. Beard Houseplant and his friend hovered near the glass, watching with the eyes of men so used to their own importance that they couldn't imagine a day ordered by anything else. Joe stood in the doorway to the range, arms folded, face trying to telegraph support without adding herself to a story she hadn't consented to join. "Let's go," Cade said, and they stepped out into the parking lot where the air smelled like warm rubber and cut grass, and two unmarked sedans idled as if they had nowhere better to be until they were needed. Hall looked at Vega, and Vega gave the smallest nod. "Mr. Mercer," Hall began, voice soft as if he were announcing a last boarding call, "we received a claim that contradicts your last report. We'd like to see your home today." Cade tightened his fingers around Ivy's hand until she squeezed back, a secret Morse code for "we're together." He tasted metal again. "What claim?" he asked, "and from whom?" Hall took a breath. "From Ms. Carr." The name hit like the flat of a shovel. The parking lot tilted. The sun sharpened. He felt the ground reach for him with both hands and he did not let it have him. "Dad. This story took us a long time. If you like it, subscribe. Now, back to the story. Dad." Ivy's word hung in the bright lobby air like a leaf that hadn't decided which wind to believe. Investigator Hall waited with his hands open at his sides as if he were offering Cade a choice. Officer Vega's gaze rested softly on Ivy's face for a beat longer than on anything else. Somewhere behind the glass, Elaine cycled with a mechanical sigh and then went still. Cade set the tote by his boot and squared the strap of Ivy's rainbow backpack on his shoulder. The name Ms. Carr still rang in his head with the flat, metallic clank of a cell door, too familiar, too inevitable. He glanced once through the door at Joe, who was watching him from the threshold with a look that mixed apology and something like solidarity. "We can talk outside," Hall repeated, voice even. "Less noise." "Okay," Cade said. The word came out steady. Inside his chest, the old tide pushed against shore and retreated, then pushed again. He reached for Ivy's hand. "We're together," he said to her, too quiet for anyone else. "We're together," she echoed, and the coin in her palm printed a small circle into her skin like a promise wearing a ring. They stepped into the sun. The bell above the door tinged once. The parking lot smelled like warm rubber and last night's rain coaxed into steam by noon. Two unmarked sedans idled at the curb. A family minivan rolled past with a soccer ball decal on the back window, carrying a life that did not have to explain itself to anyone. Hall gestured toward the shade near the vending machine's exhaust fan. "Mr. Mercer," he said, "we received a call this morning. Ms. Carr reported concerns regarding supervision and safety. She stated that your daughter appears with unexplained facial marks and that you brought her to an active firing range as a participant. She used the phrase reckless endangerment. We are obligated to follow up." Cade heard the words in the same way he used to hear distant artillery, first as a concept and then as physics. "Unexplained," he repeated, because the word had blade edges. Vega's tone softened without losing its professional spine. "Sir, we need to see your home environment today. If it's a good time." Good time. The phrase almost made him laugh. He didn't. He knelt to Ivy's level and brushed her shoulder. "We're going to show these gentlemen our apartment. Quick tour. Then grilled cheese. Okay?" "Okay," she said. She put the coin in her pocket and patted it twice, establishing the ritual that made the world obey. When Cade stood, Hall's eyes flicked to the range door where Beard Houseplant and his friend were pressed to the glass like kids at an aquarium, faces lit with the contemplation of other people's lives. Hall followed Cade's glance and then let his gaze return to the business at hand. "We can follow you," Hall said. "Or you can ride with us if that feels easier." "My truck's right there," Cade answered. "Ivy's seat is set." He forced air through his lungs with intent, a manual override. "We'll drive." Vega nodded. "We'll be right behind." Cade moved with that particular focus that makes a man look slow when he's actually auditing every motion, toed into the back seat, range case latched, ear protection folded away, eye protection into its pouch. He buckled Ivy in, checking every strap twice, the two-finger test at the collarbone, the chest clip at armpit level. His hands didn't shake. He did not hurry. Hurrying made you imprecise, and imprecision was the first language of regret. Jo slipped through the door and crossed the sidewalk. "Hey," she said, low enough to be private. "For what it's worth, you were a model customer in there. If anyone calls about what happened, it was on 3, not 7. I filed the incident card." "Thank you," Cade answered. His throat felt tight with the kind of gratitude that doesn't relieve anything, it just widens the space you have to carry the rest. Jo's eyes found Ivy's through the back seat window. She wiggled 2 fingers in a shy salute. Ivy wiggled back. "Take care," Jo said to Cade. "And hey, sometimes people who love a story try to make yours theirs. Don't let them." He nodded once, climbed in, and started the truck. The AC stuttered, found its breath, and then cooled the cab in a sigh. Cade pulled out slow, Hall's sedan aligning behind like a calm shadow. On the road, Ivy traced a line of condensation on her window and watched it evaporate. "Is Ms. Carr a bad guy?" she asked without turning her head. "Ms. Carr is scared," Cade said, choosing each syllable like a brick and laying them in a wall that would hold until he could build something better. Sometimes scared people call other people bad so they can feel safer. But people aren't just one thing. "Are we bad?" Ivy asked. He reached a hand back and laid his fingers on the small shoe resting on the booster seat. "We're together," he said. At a red light, his phone buzzed with a message from Lena, "Remember to breathe. If they come today, be courteous, be thorough. You've done the work." He nodded to the screen like a man acknowledging an order he already intended to carry out. They turned into the apartment complex, sunburned grass, a pool closed with a chain and a sign that said "Pardon our filter," and parked under their carport. Hall and Vega slid into the space by the curb. Cade unbuckled Ivy, lifted the tote, and led them up one flight of stairs that creaked in all the usual places. At the door, he paused. He saw their home with the eyes of strangers and the eyes of a man who had made this place out of thrift store wood and sweat, the neat shoes by the mat, the magnetic chore chart with Ivy's name spelled out in foam letters, the whiteboard with menu scribbled in black next to a child's drawing of a whale. On the hook by the door hung a spare ear protection headset sized for a child, capped with glitter stickers. He swallowed. "Come in," he said, and held the door wide. The apartment smelled like cold coffee and ivory dish soap. Sun fell across the hand-me-down couch where a blue Afghan slouched like a tired cat. On the table sat Ivy's dinosaur workbook, a small jar of broken crayons, and a folded note from her teacher printed in careful all caps, "Ivy is a JOI. Please return library book Friday." "Thank you." Hall took it in with a scan that felt like a photograph, frame, focus, catalog. Vega paused by the shoe mat and towed a loose screw back into place with the instinct of a man who had fixed more things than he wanted to admit. "Mind if we look around?" Hall asked. "Please do," Cade replied. He kept his hands visible and his voice even. "Do you want any documents? School reports? Her pediatrician's clearance from last month?" Eventually, Hall said. "Let's do a walkthrough first." Cade moved with them from the living room to the kitchen. On the fridge, magnets held a calendar speckled with small drawings, stars for morning routines, hearts for bedtime stories completed, a tiny coin sketched on Tuesday. The freezer hummed its loyal little hum. The sink held 2 bowls, soaked and ready. A child lock on the undersink cabinet clicked under Vega's fingers when he tested it. The back door had a security chain set high. A step stool rested beneath a shelf where the knives sat in a block, slots filled like notes on a staff. "Ivy," Hall said gently, "what's your favorite thing to eat at home?" "Pancakes," she said into his elbow, then more clearly, "pancakes with circles. Dad makes the circles." "Circles?" Vega asked, half smiling. Ivy nodded. "He flips them and they look like coins." They moved down the short hall. The bathroom, soft step stool, non-slip mat, the cabinet hinge with the offending bite. Cade touched it. "This is the hinge I reported," he said, voice catching only slightly. "I replaced it the same day." She leaned to reach a towel, it sprung back. The urgent care notes in the folder. Vega crouched and opened, closed, opened. "This one's a jumper," he murmured to Hall, and then to Cade, "You replaced it well." Ivy's room waited with its small bed, the blanket littered with fabric whales and a stuffed dog named Clem. On the dresser, a framed photo showed her smiling in front of a mural at the laundromat, blue whales spouting white bubbles the shape of coins. The coin motif followed her life around like a quiet guardian. "Can I see your books?" Vega asked, and Ivy took his hand, unafraid now that the officer had asked for something she considered sacred. She pulled 4 spines, sharks, circles all around, the whales of Walnut Street, and the brave rabbit. Vega leafed through them with surprising familiarity. Hall, in the doorway, made notes on a small pad with a pen that clicked like a ticking clock. Cade's room was small, a bed made military neat because old habits are cheaper than new ones, a trunk at the foot, a closet with 3 button-down shirts and a suit bag like a promise waiting its day. In the corner, a metal safe sat bolted to the floor. A cable lock hung coiled on a hook nearby. A bright orange chamber flag rested on top like a flag on a small mountain. Hall glanced from the safe to Cade. "I can demonstrate storage if required," Cade said. "Unloaded, locked. Ammo separate. Keys on me, spares and sealed envelope with my attorney." He didn't say Lena's name because he didn't want to fold her into the room just yet. Hall nodded. "We'll need to confirm, but we can do that at the end." They returned to the living room. Hall's pen stopped clicking. He took a slow breath, and Cade knew from the shape of it that a hard question was about to wear a polite coat. "Mr. Mercer," Hall said, "may we speak with Ivy for a few minutes?" "We can do that here with you in the room if she prefers, or in her room with Officer Vega while I stay here with you." "Up to her." Cade studied Ivy's face. He remembered Lena's voice on the phone, when they asked to talk to her, "Let Ivy decide. Give her the power." He knelt. "Do you want me to be right next to you," he asked, "or in the room but quiet, or would you rather talk to the officer in your room with the door open so I can hear you breathe?" Ivy put her fingers on his jaw, felt the overnight stubble like sand. She thought about the options the way she thought about choosing a crayon. "Door open," she decided. Then, to Vega, "Can Clem come?" "Clem is mandatory," Vega said solemnly. They went down the hall. The door stayed open a hand's width. Hall remained with Cade in the living room. The fans whispered. Outside, a mower droned somewhere too far away to be interesting. Hall flipped his notebook closed and laid the pen across it. "You seem organized," he said without inflection, which Cade had learned was the first step toward deciding whether you were something worse. "I have to be," Cade said. "Chaos is expensive." "You were in." Hall left the blank like an offering. "Places that taught me organization," Cade said. He had become practiced at not naming things that would turn into barbed wire once they were spoken. Hall didn't press. In the hallway, Ivy's voice floated out, soft, answering. Vega's tone came back in the rhythm professionals use with kids, each question a stepping stone small enough to cross. Cade stood still and let the sound wrap the edges of the room in human fabric. Vega and Ivy reappeared carrying Clem like a baton. Vega returned the stuffed dog to the bed with ceremony and followed Ivy into the living room. He nodded to Hall with a minute movement that could mean a dozen things. To Cade he said, "She's articulate." She reported the cabinet hinge as the cause of the facial mark. She described your rules at the range, behind the glass, headphones on, hands in lap when the light is green. She reported you got upset at eggs when they don't peel. We share that flaw. Ivy looked scandalized. It's the egg's fault, she declared. Cade felt his chest loosen an inch. Hall cleared his throat. We'll need to see the storage, he said, returning to procedure like a nurse to a chart. Cade opened the safe with the key, stepped back so they could see the interior without cataloging a single serial number. The lockbox for ammunition sat on the top shelf like a gray brick. The receiver rested below with the slide locked back and a bright flag through the chamber. Hall nodded once. Vega checked the bolt, eyes only, then looked at Cade with a small drop of something like respect in his voice. Textbook, he said. A knock cut across the room like a new paragraph. All four heads turned. The knock came again, knuckles with entitlement, the sound of a person who knocks as if they forget doors' separate lives. Cade's pulse found the cadence of boots on gravel, the old song, unasked. He set the key on the shelf, closed the safe without locking it, and went to the door. He peeked through the hole. Miss Carr stood on the landing with a man in a gray suit. Her hair was the strict kind that doesn't learn from wind. The man's tie was red without apology. Behind them, the stairwell hummed with the late heat of the day. Cade exhaled through his nose. That will be Miss Carr, he said quietly to Hall. Open when you're ready, Hall replied. He stepped back to a position near the bookcase where he could be neutral without ceding ground. Vega moved sideways, centering Ivy in his peripheral vision with casual precision. Cade opened the door. Ms. Carr's eyes took him in with that quick, surgical pass people use when they've already written a story and are looking for props. Cade, she said, breathless with either stares or purpose. This is Mr. Pike. She gestured to the suit. He represents me. Pike smiled with teeth. Afternoon. Cade kept his hand on the door, his voice even. We're in the middle of a home visit, he said. That's why we're here, Ms. Carr replied, and tried to step forward. Hall didn't move, didn't speak, but somehow the space in front of the door stayed the same size as before and could not be entered without permission. Ma'am, Hall said finally, polite to the root, we'll be completing our assessment. You're welcome to wait on the landing. We'll take statements after. Mr. Pike's smile tried another tooth. We're concerned about Ivy's exposure to firearms, he said. Ms. Carr received a video from this morning. He held his phone up and tapped. Beard Houseplant's face appeared on the screen, 10 seconds of Cade at lane 7, the coin in Ivy's palm through the glass, the camera tilted to frame what it wanted, a child and a gun in the same sentence. The caption read, Hero Dad teaches kid to shoot, at people's range? Cade felt his jaw clench, not with rage but with the colder thing that plans triage. That's misleading, he said. Misleading is generous, Vega muttered. Hall watched the screen once, exactly as long as needed, and no longer. We have the range officer's statement, he said. We'll weigh everything. Ms. Carr's mouth thinned. Her eyes found Ivy past Cade's shoulder and softened for a flicker, then turned back to hard chalk. Ivy, she called brightly, sweetie, you remember me? Ivy stepped closer to Cade and slid her fingers into the back pocket of his jeans, a child's natural holster. Hi, she said, uncertain, polite because she had been taught that courtesy costs less than rudeness until it doesn't. Ms. Carr, Cade said mildly, we can keep Ivy out of this for the moment. Ivy is the point, Pike said. She is the person, Cade corrected. Not the point. For a heartbeat everyone simply breathed. Then Hall cleared his throat. Ma'am, sir, he said to Miss Carr and Pike, we'll be in touch when we've concluded. Then, to Cade, we'll finish our checklist. They did. They checked smoke detectors, beep. They eyeballed the first aid kit, stocked. They noted the magnet schedule, the emergency numbers printed in black tape on the inside of the cabinet like a poem of preparedness. They looked at the small jar of screws and anchors labeled MISC with a smiley face because Cade had once tried to name Chaos and decided to befriend it instead. When they were done, Hall closed his notebook. Mr. Mercer, he said, we'll file today. Our recommendation will note compliance and stability, with no immediate hazards observed. We will also note the range visit with contextual information from the officer on site and your storage protocols. Cade's knees almost failed him with relief. Almost. Thank you, he said, and then, because the part of him that had learned to plan for the enemy's next move never slept, what happens now? Now, Hall replied, we write. The court will review. Friday is still on the calendar. At the door, Ms. Carr stood with arms folded, looking both like a woman outside in the heat and like a woman trying to keep her convictions from melting. Pike checked his watch as if time paid him rent. Hall and Vega stepped past them onto the landing. Ma'am, Hall said. We'll contact you by 4. Thank you, Ms. Carr said, and to Cade, I hope you're right about yourself. Cade did not take the bait. I hope we're all right about Ivy, he said. They left. The stairwell gulped them. Cade closed the door and leaned his forehead against it for 3 slow breaths. Ivy touched his thigh, grounding him. We did brave, she said. We did, he answered. Brave and boring. Boring wins, she parroted solemnly, and went to retrieve Clem from the couch as if returning to temple duty. The apartment felt like a ship eased from a storm into a hard, glittering calm. Cade texted Lena, visit done. They saw everything. He set the phone down. It rang. Unknown number. The kind that had the flavor of official. He answered. Mercer. A woman's voice, efficient but human. Mr. Mercer? This is Clerk Danziger from Judge Bueller's chambers. There has been a motion filed for a temporary change in custody pending Friday's hearing. There's a request for an emergency order. Cade felt the floor tilt. On what grounds? Allegations regarding safety, Danziger said. There is a preliminary review in an hour. If granted, we will dispatch an officer to serve the order. In an hour, he repeated, flat, because repetition is what you do when a new reality presents itself like a stranger at your table claiming a seat. I recommend contacting counsel, Danziger said. Good luck. The line clicked dead. Quiet surged back and filled the room with the sound of the fridge cycling and the tiny, steady, mortal heart of an apartment doing its best. Cade dialed Lena. Straight to voicemail. He tried again. Voicemail. He texted, emergency motion filed. 1 hour. Call me. He paced to the window, looked down into the parking lot where 2 mourning doves adjudicated the boundary between shade and sun. He paced back. Ivy had drawn 2 circles on a notebook, one big, one small. She connected them with a line. Road, she announced. Coin goes to coin. What's the road today? He asked, because questions anchor a boat. Grilled cheese, she said decisively. Then coin bath. Then we put the coin in the freezer and see if it likes being cold. He smiled. That's a scientific study. She wrinkled her nose. Science is cold. He took out bread and cheddar. Buttered the pan. Let the normal dance restore the day 1 step at a time. In the sizzle he could fake a future. He handed Ivy the first triangle and watched her bite it like a ceremony. The door knocked again. Not tentative. Not angry. Official. Cade's stomach went weightless. He set the spatula down, wiped his hands on a towel, and went to the peephole. A uniformed deputy stood there, hat under his arm, posture that said he wanted this to be easier than it usually was. In his other hand, a manila envelope. Cade opened the door. Deputy. Mr. Mercer. The deputy's voice was the human kind that has to wear armor and forget it's wearing armor until it hurts. I'm serving you with a temporary order pending review. He held out the envelope like a slow blade. Cade took it. He didn't look down. He knew what it would say before he read it, words that arranged themselves between him and his child with the easy confidence of ink. He kept his eyes on the deputy, because looking at another human is how you keep from drowning. What does it require? He asked evenly. The deputy licked his lip, a nervous tick. Supervised contact only until Friday, he said. And, temporary placement with Ms. Carr pending hearing. Cade's hearing narrowed to a pinpoint and then widened, a pulse that could knock a wall down. Behind him, Ivy said, "Dad?" The word did not tremble. It asked for a map. "Can we?" Cade swallowed. "Can we at least read this with my counsel on the phone?" "You've got an hour before pickup," the deputy said. "I'm sorry." He looked like a man who had knocked on too many doors and had the same conversation and never got good at it. Lena called back as if she had been waiting to appear on cue. Cade put her on speaker. He explained in 6 precise sentences while holding eye contact with the deputy because men who look away are men who lose ground. Lena's voice came through bright and controlled. "Deputy, this is Attorney Lena Reyes. With your permission, I'd like to read the order aloud to my client over the phone and confirm its conditions. I also wish to note for the record that an in-person home visit occurred not 20 minutes ago with no hazards found." The deputy nodded to the ear. "Ma'am, that's above my pay grade, but yes, you can read it." He handed the envelope to Cade. "Best do it fast." Cade slit the top with a butter knife because he refused to open this with anything he used for work or safety. He unfolded the papers. The words swam and then settled, like silt in a jar. Lena read with him, paragraph by paragraph, translating where needed, anchoring where possible. He signed where he had to sign because refusing signatures does not change the name at the top of an order, it just makes paper angrier. When it was done, the deputy looked at him as if waiting for the explosion that would not come. "We can do this gently," the deputy said, and took off his hat as if they were in church. "Gently is mandatory," Cade replied. "She's 6. They stood in the living room. The afternoon light had softened as if it wanted permission, too. Ivy sat on the couch holding Clem. She looked at Cade, then at the deputy, then back, measuring the scene with the particular math of a child who had learned more equational thinking than any 6-year-old should. Cade knelt so they were eye level and not 1 inch less. "Bug," he said, "steady, every cell composing. We're going to try something hard. Ms. Carr asked for you to stay at her house for a few sleeps until Friday while some people decide things. I don't agree. Ms. Lena doesn't agree. But right now the paper says we try it this way. I will see you every day we can, with another grown-up in the room. I'm not going anywhere. You hear me?" Ivy watched his mouth until the shape of his words became a shape she could hold. "I hear," she said, and put the coin in his palm. "Hold this for me. Keep it warm." He swallowed. "Deal. This coin is my job until you come back and yell at me for not keeping it cold enough." Coins like warm, she decided, revising her science. But also cold. He kissed her forehead. He stood. He turned to the deputy. "We will not make this a scene," he said. "You have my word." Ms. Carr waited on the landing with Mr. Pike. She had put on a look that wanted to be compassion but had not practiced enough to be convincing. When Ivy stepped out holding Clem in a small backpack, Ms. Carr crouched, arms open. Ivy went into them with the reserve of a child entering a room where the furniture has been moved, familiar shapes and unfamiliar arrangements. Cade stood in the doorway, haloed by his home. He handed the deputy a copy of the home visit receipt Hall had left on the table. The deputy took it and tucked it into his breast pocket like a note he wanted to read later. "We'll follow you to Ms. Carr's," the deputy said. "Standard protocol." At the top of the stairs, Ivy twisted to look back. "Dad?" she asked softly. He lifted the coin. "Together," he said. She nodded and let Ms. Carr take her hand. They descended. He locked the door behind them because a locked door is a spell you cast even when there is nothing left inside to protect but the echo of your own footsteps. He leaned his head against the wood for a count of 5. Then he moved. He grabbed the folder from the kitchen. He checked the safe again, placed the key back on its nail, and then pocketed it with the coin. He texted Lena, following to Ms. Carr's. "Meet me there if possible." The drive took 7 minutes that lasted a lifetime and a half. The deputy's cruiser idled back, an escort nobody wanted. Cade pulled in behind Miss Carr's tidy bungalow with its white porch and potted geraniums. The yard was clean in a way that said we host other people's opinions here and make them comfortable. Inside, the air smelled like lemon cleaner and candle. Photos lined the hallway, Miss Carr with colleagues at a charity gala, Miss Carr at a podium, no photos of Ivy, of course. The guest room had been staged, a pink duvet, a shelf with 2 new picture books, a framed print that said Girl Power in scripted gold. It was the kind of room a catalog would approve of. Ivy can stay here, Miss Carr announced, as if presentation were merit. We'll have a routine. Structure is important. Structure's everything, Cade said, not unkindly. Ivy set Clem on the bed carefully, as if placing a stone on a cairn. She climbed up and bounced once, experimentally, then stopped because bouncing was an act of rebellion and she was not in the mood. The deputy watched from the doorway, hat in hand. We good? He asked the room, and the room obliged by pretending to be. Cade stood with his hands in his pockets because they did not know what else to do. He looked at Ivy and saw a future rearranging its furniture. Miss Carr didn't look at him when she spoke. We'll pick a time for supervised visits, she said. Mr. Pike will coordinate. Cade nodded. Tomorrow at the library. 10 a.m. Choose a third party we both agree on. I will not miss it for anything. She hesitated. Fine. He took one step toward Ivy. The deputy's shoulders shifted slightly, not to block him, but to remind everyone that bodies sometimes misunderstand paper. Cade stopped one step short and crouched. Bug, he said softly. I'm leaving Clem's blankie here. He tucked the small blanket under Clem's arm like a sash. Coin is with me. You call when you want to hear its adventures. She nodded solemnly. Coins don't talk, she whispered. They do when you're sleeping, he whispered back. I have to tell you what they say. She blinked hard and then did not cry, because she had decided not to. Okay, she said. Tell them to say big words. He stood. He turned to Miss Carr. Please make sure she eats, he said. She says she's full when she's scared. I know children, Miss Carr replied. I work in child advocacy. He almost said, then why does this feel like the opposite of advocacy? He didn't. He said, thank you, because sometimes you say thank you to keep words from becoming weapons. At the door, the deputy touched Cade's elbow with a human's permission. I'll be around, he said. Call if you need to breathe at someone who isn't a wall. Cade nodded. He stepped out into the evening that had stealthily become evening while nobody was looking. The geraniums off-gassed their particular green softness. He walked to his truck like a man who had learned to walk across uneven ground carrying fragile things. His phone buzzed. Lena, I'm here. 2 minutes. Wait outside. Don't go back in. I have news. He leaned against the warm metal of the fender and watched the deputy's cruiser pull away. The street had the hush of dinner hour, the clink of plates, a muffled laugh, somebody's TV doing sports. Across the way, a kid practiced free throws in a driveway, each thump of the ball a metronome for a life uncomplicated by court calendars. Lena's Prius slid to the curb. She got out with a tablet tucked under her arm and determination wrapped around her like a scarf. Breathe, she said. We have 20 minutes to file a counter and a proposed visitation schedule with a neutral. We also have Joe's incident report, she faxed it to me. It contradicts the video nicely. Is this winnable? Cade asked, and the word came out like a boy asking if the tide could be talked into changing its mind. I don't promise wins, Lena said. I promise work. And you have done yours so thoroughly the court will have to pretend not to see it, and that's hard to do. She pointed to his pocket. Coin? He took it out. It sat on his palm like a little moon. Ivy asked me to keep it warm, he said, and almost smiled. Lena's eyes softened. Then let's build a fire. She tapped her tablet. We'll request supervised visits at the range of your choosing with the understanding that she remains behind the glass. We'll include medical records, the Hinge report, school letters, neighbor statements. She looked toward the house. Do you have a neighbor willing to speak? Mr. Alvarez downstairs, Cade said. He checks our smoke detector batteries when I forget. He paused. I don't forget. He insists. Perfect, Lena said. Old men who insist on safety are gold in court. She started tapping. We also file a motion to sanction the misuse of social media. We reference the range officer in policy. We request an emergency modification or, failing that, the strictest timeline between supervised visits. Cade watched her build a bridge out of nouns. What do I do? Tonight? Lena asked, eyes still on the screen. You go home. You take a shower. You lay out tomorrow's clothes like a religion. You clean, not because anyone's coming, but because ritual is a way to tell your nervous system we're ready. She looked up. And you write Ivy a note. 2 sentences. Tell her one true thing about tomorrow that you are sure won't be taken from you. He nodded. 2 sentences, he echoed, like a man repeating the steps to disable a bomb. Lena's phone buzzed. She glanced and grinned. Joe sent the security footage. The video will die on arrival. She looked toward the house again. Still, she added, do not go back inside tonight. Not because of Ms. Carr. Because you need to practice letting other people hold things. That's the worst discipline you will learn. He held the coin. Coins like warm and cold, he said. Lena blinked. I have no idea what that means, but you're right. She handed him a printed packet from her bag. First drafts. Sign here and here. I'll file. Sleep if you can. He signed on the fender of his truck while the sky bruised into evening. Lena squeezed his shoulder and left with the hum of a woman who had learned to turn fury into paperwork. Cade watched her taillights stitch themselves into the street. He looked at Ms. Carr's front window. A shadow moved, small, familiar. For a second he thought Ivy would appear and press her hand to the glass. She didn't. The curtain settled. He got in his truck and drove home by muscle memory. The apartment was too quiet. He set the coin on the counter, then picked it up again because the counter felt wrong. He put it on the windowsill. Wrong. He carried it from room to room like a man with a candle looking for the right shelf in a church. He ended up in Ivy's room. Clem's spare blanket waited on the pillow like a flag of a small, proud nation. He set the coin on the dresser next to the picture of Ivy under the whale and spoke aloud to the empty air because sometimes the empty air answers. She likes warm, he said, but also cold. We'll find both. He made himself shower. He laid out a shirt and pants and socks and, for the first time in months, polished his boots. He printed a copy of the school report and the pediatrician's note and placed them in order under a paperweight in the shape of a lighthouse. He wrote the 2 sentences on an index card. Tomorrow we read a library book together. I will be there early. His phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. He almost didn't touch it. He did. Beard houseplant, you think you're special. You're not. He stared at it for a second, then deleted it, then blocked the number because a block is a small kindness you give yourself when the world offers you too many invitations to arguments in rooms that smell like insecurity. The apartment settled. Street lights flicked on. The fridge purred its faithful song. Cade brushed his teeth in the silence of a house missing laughter. He lay down and stared at the ceiling fan and did not count anything because counting sometimes makes time insolent. He fell asleep the way people with training fall asleep, suddenly, because they can, and lightly, because they must. The phone dragged him back. 11:47 p.m. Lena. He hit accept before the second buzz. Yeah. Emergency calendar tomorrow at 8, she said. Judge moved it forward. Be at the courthouse by 7:30. We have a shot at revising the temporary order before breakfast. Hall filed his report. She paused. It's good. Vega appended. Cade sat up. Copy, he said, Because old language comforts new skin. Set 2 alarms, Lena continued. Drink water. Don't speak to Ms. Carr tonight, no matter what she texts. I'll see you at 7:20. Wear the suit. Don't forget the coin. I won't, he said. He hung up, drank water, set 2 alarms. He put the coin in the pocket of the suit pants and patted it twice. He lay down again and listened to the apartment breathe until he fell through the soft trapdoor of fatigue. Dawn came like a light turned on by a human hand instead of the sun. He showered. He dressed. He looked at himself in the bathroom mirror and held his own gaze until he believed he would carry whatever the morning required. He drove to the courthouse. Hall met him on the steps with a nod that contained 3 words, "You did good." Vega appeared at the metal detector, off-duty, in a button-down that made him look like a math teacher. Couldn't sleep, Vega said, as if explaining his presence to himself more than to anyone else. Lena arrived smelling of coffee and thunder. We go in, she said. We sit down. We breathe through our noses. We let the facts do their job. If they don't, we make more facts. They entered. The courtroom felt like a church rebranded, pews, a place at the front where words become authority, a hush that had been taught to people in childhood. Judge Bueller took the bench with hair that had decided to stop trying to be anything but hair. He adjusted his glasses. Matter of Mercer, he said. Emergency motion to maintain temporary order. Responses? Lena stood. She spoke with the clarity of a woman who had learned to put anger in a harness and make it pull. She laid out the visit, the report, the storage protocols, Joe's statement, the video's misrepresentation, the hinge, the school note. She made a bridge of nouns and verbs. Cade watched her build it and put his weight on it and felt it hold. Mr. Pike stood and tried to throw adjectives at the bridge. Reckless, unsafe, irresponsible. He tried to make the word veteran into something that meant unpredictable. Lena let him, then picked up each adjective and held it by the tail until it stopped writhing and became a noun. Evidence? She asked. He had a video. Joe had context. He had concerns. Hall had a report. Judge Bueller listened. Judges listen differently than other people, their silence has edges. When Mr. Pike finished, the judge looked down at the file as if it were a garden that needed weeding. Mr. Mercer, the judge said at last. Stand. Cade did. The judge adjusted his glasses again. Do you love your child? The question irritated Cade's training, too simple, too obvious, the kind of question that invites a wrong tone. He made his face plain. Yes, Your Honor. Do you make mistakes? The judge asked. Yes, Your Honor. He almost smiled. Daily. I categorize them, sir. A small ripple of human noise moved across the benches like wind through grass. Do you understand, the judge continued, why the court takes seriously any allegation involving firearms and children? Yes, Your Honor, Cade said, and then, because this was the only place to put it, I also understand safety culture. It is not posts, it is practices. I have those. She was behind glass. We were there to practice quietness, not heroics. The judge looked at Hall's report again, then at Vega's appendix. Officer Vega, he said. You were present? Vega stood. Yes, Your Honor. You observed, the judge prompted. A safe home, Vega said. Safe storage. A child who understands rules. A father who knows his own limits. He paused. A community that's noisy about him in ways that have more to do with the community than with the child. Judge Bueller leaned back. Ms. Carr, he said, and the woman stood at the back of the courtroom, as if she had wanted to be far enough away to observe herself. What is the good faith basis for your emergency motion beyond the video? Ms. Carr's mouth worked through its paces. She looked at Ivy sitting with a court-appointed advocate, coloring a whale. She looked at Cade. Her shoulders dipped. Fear, she said honestly. And, the past. The past is heavy, the judge said. We carry some and put some down. He tapped the file. The court modifies the temporary order, he announced, to immediate supervised visitation starting today, location to be mutually agreed. Overnights remain suspended pending Friday's hearing. The range visit, while not ideal optics, was within policy given the facts. Mr. Mercer, do not return there with your child pending the hearing. Ms. Carr, refrain from social media submissions without context. Counsel will prepare an order. He rapped his gavel. Next. Lena exhaled as if someone had set something heavy down. Cade's knees wanted to sit. He didn't. He stared at the coin in his pocket and felt its small round certainty like a planet under his thumb. They streamed out into the hallway chaos of lives intersecting. Lena touched his sleeve. Library at 10, she said. I'll text the advocate. You go breathe. Cade nodded and drifted down the steps into a morning that had decided to be bright after all. He texted Ivy's advocate, library. 10. Whale book. He started walking toward the parking lot. His phone buzzed. Unknown number again. He almost ignored it. He didn't. A voice he hadn't heard in 3 years until it had found him twice in the same day. Ms. Carr, Cade, she said, not hard this time. Before you go. There's something I didn't mention. He stopped on the landing. Pigeons shuffled along the railing like bored jurors. What? He asked carefully. Last night, Ms. Carr said, someone slid a note under my door. No return address. It says they know where you keep your safe key. Cade felt the world tilt again, not because of paper this time but because of the idea of hands. The image of the key on its nail in his room flashed in his mind, and then the image of his pocket where the key lay now next to the coin, warm. Read it, he said. Her breath came quick. She read, tell the court you're scared of him. He keeps a spare above the stove. He gets angry. You'll win. Signed, a friend. She paused. You don't keep it there. No, he said. He swallowed. He felt his skin go cold, the precise steel cold of a scope at dawn. Someone has been in my apartment if they know where my stove is. Do you think, Ms. Carr began, and stopped. Lena appeared at his elbow like she always did when the rails began to shake. What happened? She asked. Cade handed her the phone. She listened. Her eyes sharpened. We file a police report, she said briskly. And we ask Hall to get a patrol to your place now. Do not go home alone. In the distance, a siren woke like a story that had decided to interrupt all the other stories. Hall crossed the courtyard toward them as if called by name. Vega's head surfaced over the crowd like a buoy. The four of them formed a small, accidental island in the tide of courthouse traffic. Hall's phone chirped. He glanced, frowned. That's dispatch, he said. He slid his finger across the screen. Hall. He listened. The blood drained from his face a notch. He looked up at Cade. Mr. Mercer, he said carefully. Your building manager just reported a forced entry into your unit. Door splintered. Neighbor called it in. He paused. Nothing taken. Safe intact. But there's a note on your kitchen counter. Lena's hand found Cade's sleeve. What does it say? She asked. Hall listened again, then repeated, eyes on Cade as if to soften the blow by not looking away. It says, get warm. The coin in Cade's pocket burned against his thigh as if it had a fever. He reached for it and felt his fingers go slick. The courthouse air seemed to thin. People became shapes. His body swayed in place and then stilled by will. Lena's voice came from somewhere close and steady, don't move. We do this smart. Cade closed his fist around the coin, heat and cold indistinguishable in his palm, and looked at Hall. What do they want? He asked, his voice a wire pulled tight over a canyon. What do they want from me? Hall answered without ceremony. To make you move fast. He shook his head. Don't. Cade nodded, every old instinct clawing up his spine, begging to run, to fight, to fix. He kept still, because stillness is what saves children when running invites wolves. The siren cut off. The day held its breath. 2 more great stories are next. Don't miss them. Subscribe and turn on notifications.